My name is Julia Mendez. I'm 32 years old, a graphic designer living in Portland, Oregon, and I was engaged to the love of my life. At least I thought I was. His name is Caleb. We met at a 4th of July cookout 4 years ago, and I remember thinking he had one of those faces, kind, warm, like someone you wanted to tell secrets to. From our first date, it felt like we already knew each other. He'd lost his dad when he was 9, raised by his mom in Seattle. I never met her. She passed from cancer a year before we got serious. There were no siblings, no uncles, no real family left. Just Caleb. And now me. We were 2 only children with no big families. That's what made Christmas at my parents' house in Sacramento feel so special. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you what happened, what changed everything, I want to ask you something. If you've ever had your life shift in a single moment, if you've ever looked at someone you love and suddenly realized you didn't know them at all, then I hope you'll subscribe to this channel. Here I share stories that dig deep. Real emotions, family secrets, the things we carry without even knowing. And if you stay with me, I promise to tell you this one exactly as it happened. No drama added, no details skipped. Now let me take you back to December 22nd. It was late afternoon, the kind of quiet that only happens right before dinner, when the sun is setting and the oven is warming and everyone's a little tired from errands. I was sitting on the floor in my childhood living room, wrapping gifts with my mom and Caleb. Bing Crosby played softly in the background. My dad was out picking up a last-minute ham. My mom, always the sentimental one, pulled a dusty bin from the hallway closet. "I found this while clearing the guest room," she said with a smile. "Old photos from the early 90s. Your toddler years." I laughed. "Oh God, the bowl-cut era." She opened the lid and pulled out a thick photo album, leather-bound, worn at the corners, with "Family, 1991, etched in gold on the front. She flipped it open and started showing Caleb baby pictures of me. In a stroller at the zoo, in a Minnie Mouse costume, finger painting on the kitchen floor. He smiled at each one, making sweet comments. "You've always had those big eyes," he said, touching the corner of one page. Then Mom turned to a photo I hadn't seen in years. It was taken at a barbecue. Plastic cups, red picnic table, sunlight washing over everything. I was maybe 3 on my mom's lap. Next to her stood a man I didn't recognize. He was young, maybe mid-30s, with short dark hair, sunglasses tucked in his shirt collar, one hand resting casually on my mom's shoulder. I tilted my head. "Who's that?" My mom squinted. "Oh, that's Michael. Michael Jensen. He was a friend of your dad's, I think. Or maybe from work. It was just one summer. He didn't stick around long." I was about to move on when Caleb froze. His fingers tightened around the scissors he was holding. He leaned in, eyes locked on the photo. And then, in a whisper, he said, "That's my dad." I blinked. "What?" He pointed, hand shaking slightly. "That's my dad. But he's dead." The room went still. My mom looked between us, her smile gone. "What did you say?" Caleb swallowed. "That man. His name's not Michael. That's Daniel Ward. He's my father." My mom's eyes went wide. "That's not possible. Daniel Ward." She stopped herself. I turned to her. "Wait. You know the name." She hesitated. Yes, but it can't be the same man. Daniel Ward. He dated one of my friends in college. Briefly. He was charming but unreliable. He disappeared after a few months. I turned to Caleb. "Are you sure?" He nodded slowly, voice barely audible. "That photo. I've seen one just like it. In a box of my mom's things. He wore that same shirt. That exact necklace." He pointed to the silver chain around the man's neck. A small medallion hung from it. "I used to hold that necklace when I was a kid. My mom kept it in her jewelry box after he died." No one moved. The air felt thick, like the room had shrunk. "But he died, Caleb," I said. "Didn't he?" He nodded. "Car crash. When I was 9. That's what she told me." I looked back at the photo. The man was smiling. My mom looked relaxed. I looked like I belonged. And suddenly, I didn't know who I was looking at anymore. Understood. Mom, what aren't you telling us? She looked like she might cry. I need to check something, she said softly. Then she got up and walked out of the room. Caleb and I just stared at each other. Neither of us spoke. We were too afraid of what we might say. The seconds felt like minutes as we waited for my mom to come back from wherever she'd gone. Caleb and I sat side by side on the carpet, the photo album between us like an open wound. I could hear her footsteps upstairs, drawers opening, closet doors sliding. Then silence. Finally she returned. In her hands was a manila folder, worn at the edges with our last name, Mendez, written in thick black marker. She didn't say anything. She sat down, opened the folder, and handed me a single sheet of paper. It was a birth certificate. I scanned the page, eyes catching on something instantly. Father's name, Daniel Ward. My stomach dropped. Mom! I looked up, voice caught in my throat. Is this a mistake? She closed her eyes. No, she whispered. It's not. Caleb's eyes widened. Daniel Ward was your dad. My mom nodded, her hands trembling slightly. Why did you lie? I asked, the words sharper than I intended. Why did you tell me Dad was my biological father? Because it was easier, she said, her voice barely holding together. Because I was scared. And because your father, the man who raised you, is the one who showed up. I stood needing space. Caleb sat frozen, his face pale. Explain, I said, pacing the room. All of it. She exhaled slowly. I met Daniel when I was 23. It was brief. He was charming, like I said, but he had secrets. He came and went. He never told me where he was from or what he did for work, but I was young and stupid and didn't ask. Her voice cracked. When I found out I was pregnant, he was already gone. I didn't even have a phone number. I tried to track him down, but nothing came up. Then I met your dad, Mike, and he took me in. He loved me, loved you before you were even born. He was there at the hospital. He signed the paperwork. He wanted to be your father. I felt tears prickling behind my eyes. And Daniel? Yes. Did he ever try to come back? She hesitated. Yes, she whispered. Once. She picked up the photo album again, flipped to the page with a barbecue photo. That day, she said. You were 3. He showed up out of nowhere. Said he'd found me through an old friend. Said he wanted to meet you. Panic. I told him he could stay for lunch but not to say anything. Not to claim anything. Mike was working that day, thank God. She looked down at the photo. After that, he disappeared again. I never saw him after. I looked at Caleb. He looked like he was in a dream he couldn't wake up from. That doesn't make sense, he said. My mom said he died when I was 9. Car crash. Closed casket. She was devastated. My mom shook her head. He was alive after that photo. I'm sure of it. Caleb ran a hand through his hair. So, what are we saying? That we're siblings. Half-siblings, technically. But the word felt too sterile for what it meant. I couldn't speak. That night I didn't sleep. Caleb and I stayed in separate rooms. I kept rereading the birth certificate, the signature, the name that had once meant nothing and now meant too much. I thought about every moment with Caleb, the way we'd fit together, the easy laughter, the comfort. And I wondered if it had been too easy. If our connection hadn't been fate, but biology. The next morning, I knocked on my mom's door before anyone else was awake. She opened it looking older than I'd ever seen her. Was there any chance, I asked, that Daniel had another child? Around the same time. She looked confused. You mean Caleb? He nodded. Could it be a coincidence? She exhaled slowly. I don't know. He never told me about other kids. But I wouldn't be surprised. He lived like someone with secrets. I sat on the edge of her bed. I need to know. We need to know. She nodded. I'll help however I can. Caleb and I barely spoke the rest of the day. We were polite in front of my family, quiet during meals. We hugged when people left, pretended nothing was wrong. But that night we sat down in the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed. "I ordered a DNA test," he said. He nodded. "Me too." We didn't say much after that. We just sat in the dark, holding mugs of tea we never drank, waiting. The DNA test results arrived 10 days after Christmas. I was at work when the email notification popped up. Subject line: "Your ancestry DNA results are ready." My breath caught. I just stared at the screen for a full minute before I clicked it. My hands were shaking as I scrolled. There it was. Name. Right at the top of my DNA matches. Caleb Ward. Half-sibling. 49.9% shared DNA. Not a cousin. Not a distant maybe. Not a fluke. It was real. I stared at the number for a long time, my heart thudding in my ears. Called Caleb immediately. He picked up on the first ring. "Did you get yours?" "Yes." "Just opened it," he said. Neither of us said anything for a few seconds. Then quietly, "It's true, huh?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah." We sat in silence again, but this one was different, heavier. "Final. We're siblings," he said, and the words felt both intimate and impossible. I wiped my eyes. "Half. But yeah." "Which means?" "Yeah." Everything stopped. We met that night at a small cafe halfway between our apartments. It was cold, drizzling lightly, and I wore the scarf Caleb gave me on our first Christmas together, unsure if I should or not. Still smelled like cedar. When I walked in, he was already at a table in the corner, staring at a mug of coffee. He looked up when I sat down. "You okay?" "Yes." He gave a dry laugh. "That's a complicated question." He nodded. "Yeah." He looked at me, then down again. "Do you ever wonder if this would have happened anyway? Even if we hadn't, met romantically?" "I do," I said. "But I don't know what it means." He rubbed his hands together. "I loved you." "I loved you too," I said. We both paused. "I still do," he added, almost like a confession. I felt something inside me crack. "I know." And I meant it. Because how do you just unlove someone? How do you erase years of memories, touch, laughter? Don't. You just learn how to carry it differently. He looked at me, his eyes red. "I feel sick thinking about it. About us. But also, it wasn't our fault." "No," I said. "It wasn't. And it was real, right? Before all this." I met his gaze. "It was the most real thing I've ever felt." He nodded. "Same." We didn't hug when we left. We just stood on the sidewalk, hands in our pockets, not knowing how to say goodbye when you're not sure what you're supposed to be anymore. Then he looked at me. "So what now?" And that question echoed for weeks. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not even my closest friends. How do you start a sentence like that? "Hey, remember my fiancé?" Turns out he's my half-brother. I avoided text. Skipped a few family dinners. I couldn't look at my mom without feeling like the ground might split open again. She called a few times, left voicemails that I didn't return. Then one day I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Caleb. "Julia." I've been thinking about that question. What now? I don't have a perfect answer. I just know I don't want this to be the end of our story. Not the romantic part, that's done. We both know that. But the rest of it? It's just beginning. We didn't choose this. But maybe we get to choose what comes next. You're my sister. And that still means something. Love. Caleb. Cried reading it. Not because of the loss, but because of what remained. He was right. We didn't choose this. But we could choose where it led. Took me weeks to call my mom back. I needed time, not just to cool down but to rebuild my voice. I'd never been the kind of daughter who yelled, who slammed doors or made scenes. I held things in. Smiled when I didn't want to. Stayed quiet when I should have asked more questions. But now I had questions. So many that I didn't know where to begin. When I finally called, she picked up before the first ring even finished. "Julia," she breathed, like the sound of my name was an exhale she'd been holding for days. "Hey, Mom. Can I come over?" I hesitated. "Yeah," I said. "Come over." She brought cookies. From the same bakery she always used when I was a kid. It felt absurd but also oddly comforting, like she wanted to bring a piece of the past we did understand, to balance all the parts we didn't. We sat at my kitchen table. Neither of us touched the cookies. "I'm not mad," I said quietly. She looked at me surprised. "You're not." "I'm hurt. I'm confused. But I'm not mad." She nodded slowly, her eyes brimming. "I didn't lie to hurt you," she said. "I lied because I thought it was the best thing. I really believed that." "I know," I said. "But it still changed everything." Her face fell. "I never thought you'd run into him or his family or anything like this. I thought it was all in the past. You didn't think I'd fall in love with my half-brother?" She winced. No. No. Of course not." I sighed. "Did you ever think about telling me?" "Ever?" She looked down. "Once. When you turned 18. I had the envelope ready. Your birth certificate. A letter I wrote. But then you got that scholarship, you were so excited, and I didn't want to ruin anything. Then again after your college graduation. But you were job hunting and..." She trailed off. I understood what she was trying to say. But everything always felt like the wrong moment to say something hard. And now we were sitting in the wreckage of every missed moment. Later that week I texted Caleb. "Coffee?" He replied almost instantly. "Absolutely." We met at the same cafe. Same table. But this time we didn't pretend to be anything other than what we were. Two people trying to rebuild something from the remains of something else. "I've been reading about sibling reunions," he said, sipping his coffee. "Yeah. There's this term. Genetic sexual attraction. Apparently it happens sometimes. When people who are related meet as adults, but don't know they're related." I looked at him, unsure of how to respond. "I just needed to know it wasn't just us," he added. He nodded. "It makes sense. We didn't grow up together. We didn't know. And the connection." I hesitated. "It felt like destiny." "It was," he said. "Just not the kind we thought." We sat in silence. Then he pulled something from his bag. A manila envelope. Inside was a copy of a photo. The same barbecue picture from my mom's album. But this one had writing on the back. In shaky script. "Daniel. 1993. Summer barbecue in Sacramento." I stared at it. Caleb looked at me. My mom never mentioned California. But she did go away for a few months when I was a baby. I always thought it was just a vacation. Now I'm wondering if she came here, if she brought me. Or if she came to find him. So they might have known about each other. He nodded. "Yeah. And if they did, then there's more to this story than we've been told." That weekend we drove to Seattle. It was Caleb's idea. My mom kept boxes in storage after she passed. I haven't gone through them all yet. It felt like trespassing through someone else's ghost. But I knew I had to go. The storage unit was cold, musty, and dimly lit. We opened box after box. Yearbooks, photo albums, VHS tapes, love letters from people long forgotten. Then we found it. A folder labeled Daniel. Inside were photos. Dozens. Some of him with Caleb as a toddler. Him alone. And tucked in the back. One of him with my mom. Arms around her. Smiling. And in her hand. A baby. Me. Blinked. Caleb stared at the photo. So she did know. He nodded. She knew. Maybe not everything but enough. There was also a letter. Unopened. Addressed to Julia, someday. I held it with shaking hands. "I can't read this yet," I said. "You don't have to," Caleb replied. "Not now." So I didn't. We sat on the cold concrete floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes and memories we never asked for. And for the first time since Christmas, I didn't feel completely broken. Just in the middle of something being rebuilt. Took me 3 weeks to open the letter. I kept it on my nightstand, then in my purse, then finally slipped it into the drawer of my desk. Just out of sight but never out of mind. Every time I touched it, I felt the weight of what I hadn't read. Like my father was still alive in the folds of that envelope, waiting to speak to me. One quiet evening, when the sky outside was painted in that soft lavender haze only winter can bring, I finally sat down. I didn't light candles or play music or make it into a moment. I just opened the envelope and read. Julia, if you're holding this, it means I never got to tell you in person. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for all the ways I failed to show up for your mother, and for you. You didn't deserve that. You deserved more. I never forgot you. Not once. I left not because I didn't care, but because I thought I wasn't good enough to stay. And I was ashamed. Your mom was strong, brave. I was neither. When I saw you that day at the barbecue, I couldn't believe how much you looked like me. I wanted to say something, to claim something, but your mom's eyes told me not to. So I left again. But I always hoped one day, if you ever wondered, that you'd find this. And no, you were never a mistake. You were the best part of me. Love always. Daniel. I didn't cry immediately. Instead, I sat there in silence, staring at my hands, as if they might belong to him somehow. I wondered what parts of me came from him. My stubbornness. My quiet anger. The way I sometimes walked away from things before I should. But I also felt something I hadn't expected. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. And that was enough for now. Caleb and I started seeing each other once a month. Not in the way we used to. Not in secret dinners and shared beds and future plans whispered in the dark. Now it was hikes, coffee, shared playlists, family stories. He called me sis one day jokingly. Startled us both. Then he smiled. And I smiled too. It was strange how something that once would have shattered me now made me feel steady, like we were building something new, something true. In the spring, we visited our father's grave. It was simple. A flat stone, 2 names, Daniel Ward and Miriam Ward, Caleb's mom buried beside him. We didn't bring flowers. We brought photos. Caleb had printed a collage of childhood pictures. Him and his mom, birthdays and playgrounds, baseball games. I brought the barbecue photo. The one where all of our lives collided in a single frame, even though none of us knew it at the time. We sat on the grass in silence for a long time. Then Caleb said, "Do you think he ever imagined this?" "I don't think we could have imagined this." He nodded. Then added, "I'm glad you're in my life, Julia. Even like this." "Me too," I said. And I meant it. That summer we threw a barbecue of our own. Backyard. Paper plates and mismatched chairs. Caleb invited a few friends. I invited mine. My mom came too, quieter than usual but smiling. She brought lemonade and helped with the grill. At one point she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for not shutting me out." I hugged her back. "Thank you for coming." Late in the afternoon, I watched Caleb toss a football with one of his coworkers. He laughed, easy and unguarded. And for the first time I didn't see my past when I looked at him. I saw possibility. Not the romantic kind, but something just as valuable. Family redefined. I don't know if I believe in fate anymore, but I do believe in choice. And I've learned that even the most devastating truths can lead to something whole, if you're brave enough to keep showing up. So that's what we did. We showed up. And that made all the difference.